Welcome back, folks. We got episode 43 today with Thane Ringler. Thane is a former professional golfer. A lot of cool stuff. He just published a book, From Here to There. It's a cool book on mastery. You guys will have to check it out. You can find him at Thane Marcus on all of his social media accounts, and then I believe ThaneMarcus.com. We'll have that all in the bio as well. But Thane is originally a Midwest boy, so we were able to connect with that. He started out in Kansas, played golf at an early age, moved out to the West Coast, got that natural vitamin D, unlike the boys that are supplementing vitamin Ds.
A lot of supplements.
Yeah, your local Walmarts are just filled with our paychecks of vitamin D supplements. From here until what, March, April?
We're going to go straight through June, Mark.
Yeah, we'll be.
What?
Yeah, I always try to think. Huh? Yeah. Oh, and for those who are wondering, the third chime in right there is Mr. Tony Vaca. He just moved here from Arizona, so that I think that sunshine thing just rattled him pretty well. Vaca was on episode 40 with us. We let him sidebar on here, episode 43 today. Did a great job with Steve and I as we got to talk to Thane. But Thane is also owner of Collaboration Coffee. He's a host of Up and Comers show podcasts out there as well. So I'd suggest you go check him out as well. As he kind of dives into being an author, coach, he's starting to do some speaking engagements. Very cool guy. Great guy to talk to. It was a lot of fun. We went, an hour 20?
About an hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah, hour and a half talking to Thane. And we went over a lot of things. What it's like to be an entrepreneur at a young age. We have not talked to a golfer yet, so to have him explain a little bit of what it's like to be a professional golfer was cool. And before we get into the podcast, Stevie, what were some things that you pulled from that show?
Favorite thing about Thane is he's extremely honest and well-spoken. So every question that we ask him, whether it's Vach, Harv, or myself, you get a very well-thought-out answer that he clearly lives his life by what he's saying. So there's going to be a lot of information that you guys can take from this podcast that can help you in your daily life. And Thane, I appreciate you helping me out with a little bit of discipline that I needed some help on, bud. So thanks for that.
Yeah, the boys might be doing a little bit of floating here. You're going to have to listen to understand that last side piece. But before we get going, Vach, do you have anything of value to add?
Yes, I do actually. No, just from listening to him, I thought he was a very positive human being, and I know that me and him would get along very, very well. And I feel like I need a guy like Thane to help me out with that discipline area, just like Steve. Right?
All right.
There we go.
Well said, Vach.
Thank you.
He might have a shot.
Oh, I just got done listening to Thane talk.
Well, best of luck, folks. Enjoy the podcast. We were coffee drinking the whole time as Thane had run some coffee sidebars. So get yourself a cup of Joe, sit down, kick the feet up, and relax. Cheers. And now we're on there we go. I pressed play. We have episode 43 today. We got Thane Ringler in the house today. Did I say that Ringler? Did I say that right there, Thane?
You got it, man. It's Ringler. You know, some people will say Wrangler, and that's cool too.
Well, those people are idiots.
It depends on where you're at in the country.
I was going to say, I felt like it came off as Wrangler. That's why I stopped myself and asked. No, we got a guy, Thane's all the way from California, so he's coming out here today. Golfer. This will be our first golfer on the podcast, episode 43. So that'll be interesting to dive into that. Steve told you before we press play, he almost got a membership to the local golf course this week, or this summer, I mean.
Several par 3 courses around the area.
So Steve has been tasting golf course memberships since like 2008 and still hasn't pulled the trigger. But more importantly, too, man, you just published a book, From Here to There, which talks. If you noticed the other day, I posted a little bit of it because I was reading a section about breathing, which we're heavily into breath practices here. So I think it'll be very cool to get involved with what you do with that, how you've learned through your platform, what you're doing currently. But before I hand it over to you, Thane, and let you kind of take us through what you're doing right now and where you've been, I also got to say Tony Vaca, who's episode 40.
Vach.
Just say hi, Vach.
I'm back.
So we'll keep him quiet unless needed. But he's going to be on the mic. He's got strict instructions to speak when me and Steve maybe hand it over to him.
I'll make you feel good about yourself, Thane, with the stuff I say. You'll go, man, I really do. I really don't have it that bad.
I think Thane's going to be fine. I'm looking at Thane's Instagram here, and any ladies who are listening to this, you'd probably want to go ahead and give him a follow.
Hit that blue button.
Ringler.
Hit that blue button.
Hit that blue button.
Good-looking cat, a lot of professional pictures. Why don't you go ahead and hit the follow button?
So with that said, Thane, I don't think that could be a better introduction from the bowl over to you. But take us through, man. How are you doing? Where are you at? Take us through the story.
Yeah, no, I'm flattered. I'm, getting the social media plug. You guys you did it all. I don't
Right
know
away.
what else to say. Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, California right now. But I am a Midwestern. I grew up in Kansas, actually.
Oh,
so,
let's go.
So I feel you guys. I'm with you. I love the Midwest. I'm all about it. And even I've been out here for 8 years now, but even in the last 7 years of that 8 years, I was going back and forth with college, and then with playing golf professionally, I based in Kansas for the summer months so that I could be central and drive everywhere around there. So this is actually the first full year that I've spent in LA. It's kind of weird. And now that it's fall, it is a little cooler this week, which makes me kind of nostalgic for the seasons of the Midwest.
There you
and
go.
I know you guys are probably do you guys have snow yet?
No, it's been raining and 32 degrees for 3.5 weeks.
It has been brutal.
Vaca's from Arizona, and he's ready
Brutal.
to just quit it. He's out of here in about a week. It's bad.
Oh, man.
Stay where you're at.
Yeah, no, there's pros and cons to every place we live, and the weather is one of the biggest pros of LA for sure, and that's partly why I stayed. So
We're taking vitamin D supplements like it's candy over here.
I know I just plan my workouts for mid-afternoon so I get all the sun.
So you started whereabouts in Kansas? So you're from Kansas.
Yes, I grew up in Hutchinson, Kansas,
Okay.
which is near Wichita, and a town of about 45,000 people.
Sure.
And one of the best golf courses in the world, actually, Prairie Dunes Country Club, in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. This course is a masterpiece. Perry
Wow.
Maxwell designed it. He designed 3 others. He designed Southern Hills, Dornick Hills in Oklahoma, both of those, and then Colonial in Dallas.
Wow.
And just an amazing golf architect. And so, yeah, getting to grow up a mile away from that course was just a dream. I had never realized it or appreciated it until you move away for college. But man, it's just a special place.
So you were kind of connected to golf at, how old are you right now?
I'm 26 now.
Okay, so you're 26, so you kind of get connected to golf right away. Is it family
Yeah.
golfers, or how did that, just the being close to the course, how did that kind of stem your passion there?
Totally, yeah. My dad was a golfer. He was an athlete. I mean, he played basketball and tennis in college. He was a dual sport athlete, and
Sure.
he was also a good golfer. And so, yeah, we living a mile away from that course, obviously that's probably part of the reason why he got me into it. And, in his thinking, it's a lifetime sport. It's a lot less injury prone, but as we'll get to later in the story, foreshadowing,
Sure.
it still does entail quite a bit of injuries. And yeah, so it was one of those fun things to do. We go out in the backyard, start swinging the club around, and I just loved it. It was something that I just naturally was drawn to. I loved all types of sports. I loved anything that involved competition, and golf was just kind of one of those avenues, one of those outlets with my dad.
So staying on that word competition, I got a few things that are starting to buzz through my head that I'm very curious about. But when you say competition, golf is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, that is pretty much a super, like tennis, super solo competitive sport. So how does that weigh on the mind of a human where you are purely in charge of your competition? Like you can't rely on a teammate if you're feeling down that day to kind of build you up. Can you?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think those are the two, and that's where I think most people will agree that golf and tennis are the two most challenging sports in the mind.
Sure.
It's very heavy on the mind, and it really comes down to there's no one to blame, right? There's no excuses. There's no other person that's responsible other than you, which is on one hand a really sucky thing, right? It's really hard and there's a lot of failure. But on the other hand, it's a really good thing because it's life, right? Life isn't all, you can't pass blame in life. You have to take ownership of your life, and they're great avenues for that. So, yeah, competition in those realms there's a lot of self-directed motivation in that. And it's easier to be motivated for that because as a competitor, like, I just want to win.
Right.
And so when I'm not winning, like, I'm going to bust my butt so that I can win. And I'm responsible for that. So it does create and instill in you a really strong work ethic and a really strong commitment to, excellence and pursuing and honing in your craft in a sense.
That's got to be interesting because I've always been a team sports guy. I played like basketball, football, baseball. So you could always play those sports like pickup. You'd just call your buddies and you would start playing. That's how you fell in love with it. How would you say, like, what got you to fall in love with golf the most as a kid? Because I'm sure everyone was saying, hey, you want to play basketball? And you were like, no, I'm going to go golfing. We'll see you later.
Yeah, I loved all sports, honestly, growing up. I did play basketball for a good bit, and I still love basketball and play that quite a bit here and there. But, yeah, it's funny, looking back on my younger self and even myself now, I'm kind of a control freak, I think. I love having control of everything. Sure. And when I can't control how others play, I can't control if I'm going to win or not, Sure. And then I'm like, okay, well, so I think that's where I naturally kind of drifted towards golf because everything fell on my shoulders means I could control everything and best guarantee victory, but even if that wasn't true, right. It was kind of how my mind operated, I think. And so it's fascinating to think about that now, which, yeah, I think that's partly why I got out of basketball in high school was because, I broke my wrist my freshman year of high school snowboarding. And so I missed half of the basketball season. It was kind of a bad experience because, you just do all the running and the sucky part of training. And then you get to the season and I can't play because my wrist is busted in a cast. Right. So I think like that was part of it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was just really enjoying having the control over my own success in that sense.
That's why I'm afraid to fly, because at some point I just know I have no control of what's going on. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Do you relate to that, Steve?
I do. That's what I was thinking about the whole time is I hate flying.
So you go golfing, how many years did you play after high school?
So after high school, I went and played collegiately at the Masters University out here in California, just north of LA.
Yep.
It's the NAIA division, and played 4 years for them. And then after graduating, turned professional pretty much the next month.
And how does that look? Because you're talking to some novice golf minds in the sense of I understand the NAIA. I think all of us do. That's that makes sense. You go out to California. I'm guessing that was as a high school kid, that's got to be awesome. Go get the sun in you. You can golf year round. You're in that world, but then you go play professionally right away. It's just as interesting again. Like you're not necessarily getting drafted as a pro golfer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how does that look? How did you decide I'm going to go this route? For people who don't understand this, especially us three, teach us a little bit about how you decide you're going pro in golf.
Yeah, it's interesting. So golf is unique in that really anyone has the opportunity to play professionally. If you have enough time and enough money, it doesn't matter who you are. You can technically become a professional and play professionally. It really is declaring status as a professional and playing in a tournament. So it's very much an open platform. It's very, the sports like baseball or basketball or football are very political, and they have big money behind them, and these corporate teams, right, that are kind of the ones that are making the decisions and determining your career.
Sure.
In golf, your career is determined by yourself and your own success. So it's a neat platform, and obviously the limitations are one that once you turn professional, there's a period where you have to declare your amateur status to a period of limbo where you can't necessarily play in either tournaments to get your amateur status back, and then it's also just really expensive, and that's why unless you're really serious about it, it's not worth it, because you can play in on better courses and better tournaments as an amateur, as a good amateur, than as like a good professional. You have to be a part of the best professionals who play on good courses as a professional. So, so there's some things that de-incentivize it, but basically for me, during college, I think a little backstory, growing up, my dad always had the dream, right, of me playing professionally.
Right.
And I was more of the realist, like, okay, Dad, that'd be sweet, but like, I want to be, I don't want to get my hopes too high. I don't want to be let down. I want to be realistic about it. So I was kind of just pacing myself, taking one step at a time. But once I got into college and I was continuing to progress year by year, and I was getting objective feedback from coaches, from other people saying, yeah, you have the goods to do this. Then it started to become more of a reality or a serious consideration for myself. And so, I hate wasting time. And so during college, between my junior and senior year that summer, was when I really wanted to make the decision of whether or not I was going to give it a go. Right. And after considering it and getting feedback and just praying about it, it became clear it was a good choice, and it was a path that I wanted to take. And so my whole senior year, I ended up spending time creating a business plan to pitch to individuals, friends, family, and potential sponsors. And so that way I had all of the funding I needed once I graduated so that I can just make the dive and transition straight into professional golf.
Wow.
A lot of guys will typically wait until they'll usually play the summer after they graduate as an amateur and get some more experience, and then try to raise money that fall for Q school.
Sure.
And a lot of guys will go kind of the country club handshake route. And I got some great advice and counsel from my grandpa, who's a businessman, and he really helped me create a kind of a business structure that is more rewarding to the investors and sponsors long term and creates more of a relationship than a transaction. So that was really important to me.
That just seems, in terms of life experiences, that just seems like amazing advantage, right? For a college kid to put that together while they're in college and compete. That's got to segue into a lot of what you're doing now.
Totally. Yeah, no, it was an amazing experience. And that's what I'm so grateful for. It's like, I could never have predicted where
Right.
I'm at today speaking to you guys. I mean,
Right.
I never would have imagined it. And it's just neat to see how it's all worked together to lead me to where I am. I'm so grateful for that. But it was a great experience. It was hard, obviously, and that's usually what great experiences
Yep.
are. They're hard
Yep.
and
Yep.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
And,
What was the hardest
but that's
part?
beauty.
Yeah.
Just about going through that process, like what was the most difficult part of the journey?
Well, in creating the business plan, it was actually really hard working with my grandpa because he had no background with the professional golf world at all.
He just was a businessman. Yeah.
Yes, and so coming at it from a business perspective, it didn't make sense. The risk portion and analysis, like the assessment of it, it didn't make sense, right? Because it puts all the risk on the investors. It's basically a glorified donation.
Sure.
And that's part of the reality is that these guys are supporting your dream and your pursuit and your passion. And in order to, if you are successful, yeah, they're going to get really well rewarded financially, but it's more of the relationship and the journey. And so it was tough working through that. There's a lot of tension and figuring out what that looks like. And then, yeah, all the unknowns, all the, doubts or all of the uncertainties that come along with any type of pursuit like that make it challenging. So,
Well, and that took away from the thing that you loved the most about it was you got to do it on your own. I'm sure you finally all of a sudden felt like, oh my God, I got a team now that I have to take care of instead of just playing golf. That would be such a different adjustment.
That's a good
definitely
point.
is.
That's a good point, Steve.
Thanks, Mark.
Good job,
I try to make good points. Vach, don't say
I'm
anything.
very proud of you, Steve.
You're a smart guy.
Very, very
Smart
proud
guy.
of you.
Well, I guess something I'm really curious about, and there's a lot of, again, business stuff. Obviously, we're very curious to hear about the book and kind of get into where you're at now. And you even own what do you do with the coffee world?
Yeah, that's another interesting facet. So well, it actually started my senior year of college. So I enjoyed coffee. That was what kind of got me through college, right?
Sure.
The caffeine. And my senior year, being in LA, there's a lot of good cafes, and I found a list of the top 30 cafes in LA. So as an incentive to help me actually go through with this business plan and create it and spend time and knock it out, I basically said, I'm going to hit as many of the top 30 cafes in LA and use that time, dedicate that time to writing this business plan. So through that time, I got to visit probably 15 plus of the cafes, and really fell in love with kind of specialty coffee. And so actually when I was playing professionally, the off season is usually, kind of the late fall, winter, early spring months where there's not as many tournaments to compete in. And I like to have a little bit of a break as well, growing up in Kansas for the season. So I ended up starting working as a barista part-time at a local cafe, just because I wanted to learn the craft. I loved the coffee so much, and it was a great experience to really diversify and give myself some balance. Golf is so individualized and so self-focused that being a barista was a great avenue to get my eyes off myself and to serve others, and then also just get away from the golf world in general and have some balance and perspective. So through that, I gained some awesome skills as a barista, working part-time for almost 4 years, to where this last year, as I transitioned into kind of the new paths, like, man, how could I still maybe have my foot in the coffee world without that being my only thing? And so kind of created this side business called Collaboration Coffee, and it's a portable espresso bar that pops up at events or weddings all throughout LA. So this last week I actually worked at the LA Men's Market and was serving up coffee there. So it's a great way to meet people. Yeah. And it actually is kind of serving as a marketing tool for the collaboration work that I'm doing with individuals. So that was part of the incentive behind it too.
When do you sleep, Thane?
And it's funny. I've definitely spread myself a little too thin, and I've realized that this month more than ever before. So it's constantly striving to find a balance in all of that and not run myself into the hole, into the ground. So.
Well, I think that'd be interesting to get into. I know I got to keep going back to the thought of, do you still play golf, doing all these other things that you're doing? Do you still, because obviously you're in a lot of, if you're in business or golfing or entrepreneur, whatever it is, the mental game or performance psychology mindset, that's obviously served you well. Anyone who plays at a high level collegiately, even high level high school athletes and up to professional ranks, like, they do have a different mindset. They have a lot of clarity, right? And I would imagine that playing golf has served you in the business sense, that has kind of kept you on the clear vision of kind of, being able to withstand and think of things and be creative. But I'm just curious. I think it's interesting to ask people who play professionally and are very good at a craft. Do you still play golf?
Yeah, so part of the reason that I transitioned out of golf in December of this last year was due to a systemic injury. So I had a muscle strain in my left rhomboid that was golf specific and repeated over about 5 different cycles over a year and a half. And so through that time, it was a lot of failure in rehabbing or recovering poorly, not getting enough time, and then also not understanding the injury well. So it just kind of put me down this deep dive of learning about physiology, biohacking, and optimizing and solving the body. And one of my biggest concerns was near the end of it, after the 4th or 5th time it just repeated, was, will I ever be able to play pain-free golf again? And so that was like, whether it's professional or not, it was a big concern because it is something I loved. Right. And thankfully, I am now able to, and I'm so thankful and blessed to be able to play pain-free again. Oh, wow. But it was a big concern. And so I took about 6 months off after I transitioned officially out, just no swinging, no playing, to try and give my body the space to like fully reset. of this year, I got back into playing some. I give lessons to people
Nice.
On the side, and so I've got a couple clients I work with on that end and get to play with them some. And then I did like a father-son tournament. So I still will play, but as you've heard, life is so full right now. It's very much kind of a once a month kind of thing, which is this is the nature of current life. But I am excited to get back more into playing golf in the years ahead for sure.
That's interesting. So that's kind of what dove you down. Is that what kind of led you to? I know you talked a little bit about Brian McKenzie and Cody Burkhart and all that stuff. Is that kind of what led you down that path?
They were before that injury.
Oh,
so
okay.
I partnered with them for the training to get. I wanted, because I loved fitness so much growing up, and I wanted to get with trainers who would not just be so binary and only focused on the golf world, but were focused on just overall fitness and physiology. And these guys were obviously on kind of the frontier of what's being done and always challenging what's accepted, kind of the status quo or the norm.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're just people that I really wanted to partner with because of those reasons. And I thought that coming into the golf world, they could actually provide some great advantages, some kind of differentiations from the competition that I was really excited about. So,
and that go ahead, were you gonna say something,
You're good.
Steve? Well, so what did you? Because obviously we know their background. So for people who are listening, Cody's obviously down at NASA. He's on one of our podcasts. Brian, we work with Brian and do a lot of stuff that he does, and we kind of collaborate ideas, theories into our coaching world, his coaching world, yada yada, in that sense. But he's on, I can't remember what episode he was either, but he was like a 20 episode. Was he 26 or something?
I don't know, but I remember when we did it, there was frost over the entire windows.
Yeah, it was like
and he was like outside walking around.
Yeah,
it was pissing me off.
yeah, he
Kind of like Thane right now.
Just got done swimming with sharks. But you look at it, because I'm very intrigued by what you're saying of challenging the status quo, right? I think that's exciting for humans, just in general. I would urge people to live in uncertainty in just anything that they do, right? So, we're all in our, well, now Steve's 30.
Whoa.
Hey, the big 3-0.
Hey, but for you and me, we're in our 20s still, Thane, and Tony's still in his 20s, so we got some 20-year-olds here. But you obviously, to do a lot of things, to be an entrepreneur, play golf, move across the country, you've obviously have become okay with being uncomfortable, right? Or maybe you still fear that, and like all of us do, but you are okay with living in that and moving forward. But going back to Cody and Brian, what I think is interesting is how you're able to figure out these guys can coach you and teach you in a sport that maybe they're not invested in as well, right? Like Brian McKenzie, or those guys, they might not play baseball, but they've been able to help us with coaching baseball tremendously, where we've been able to ask them questions for them to kind of dive into baseball movements or mindsets or whatever it is. What I think is interesting is how all of us can connect and use each other's experiences to enhance whatever platform we're specifically on, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's huge because, and I think one of the more understated aspects of that is just the objectivity that outside perspective brings. Meaning when you come from a non-sport specific, like non-baseball specific or golf specific background, you're able to see it more clearly than you would if you were in it. So I think that that more objectivity that you get from someone that isn't directly involved with that realm or that world can be really helpful, especially if there are people like Cody and Brian who are they strive to be very ego-less, they're very much like not as much about my way or the highway, and more about like how can we all learn and grow and understand truly, which means accepting that we may be wrong in some things, and even Cody, like I had him on my podcast as well. It was pretty epic. And the one phrase that he said in there is like an old farmer one, is like the good or bad, hard to say. And it's a great just phrase of, it's hard to say if something's good or bad. Like it comes down to your perspective on it. So they just have a really powerful way of thinking that I definitely definitely can attribute a lot of my current mindset to their influence as well.
I wonder if, as you're saying that, I kind of think, and Tony, this is when you get a pass if you need to chime in here. So turn the mic on. But I wonder if you are, so put all of us in our shoes if we're an outsider, right? Where if you were to coach us or help us with baseball or mentor us in coaching baseball or kids in class, whatever it is, I wonder if someone who is outside of that specific realm actually brings more value from just asking questions of not knowing. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Steve?
Yeah,
You're looking at me weird.
Like, as in, like, can you give an example?
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it as if, like, you have where Thane can use golf and bring a pressure that you learn in golf, and you could almost ask me a question of, does this happen in baseball? And now all of a sudden I have to think outside of the norm, whereas if you're always surrounded by just baseball people and you're asking those questions, people have had those experiences, so you're just reiterating what people have already learned or perceiving what is good or bad, right? Like going to your point, or what's good or bad. Well, if you're only talking to people in your world, then it's always going to be perceived as this is bad. So if I talk to this person, it's just a continuously bad conversation or bad results, compared to if you come in and ask me a question or say, this is what we've done in golf, or this is how we've used breath in golf, or this is a psychology that we've used there. Now all of a sudden it like shifts the thought patterns of in our specific world.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's really, there's a quote that actually speaks to it well. It's this guy, Paul Valery. He said, seeing is forgetting the name of the thing one sees. And that's what allows us to truly see it, is like when you're walking down the street and there's a tree there, you don't think to yourself, oh, what is this? This is growing out of the ground. It's got bark on it. Leaves grow from, what in the world's going on? Like, no, it's just like, oh, that's a tree. Like, we don't see it, right? So we don't see the beauty of it. And so that's where familiarity can be detrimental, like you're talking about. So I think that freshness of perspective to see with the childlike eyes that really see it. And again, like, it's not to say that you people within that field and that sport aren't helpful. They are. It's just that there's sometimes blind spots that come up. And there's always blind spots, I guess is a better way to say it, that come up, right?
Right.
Well, it's just easier to get in a rut, right? You can look up anything about golf probably and just go, okay, they've been saying this for 1,000 years. I should probably just do it. But it sounds like you're a guy who's going to look to find something that can separate you. And I want to know about your coaching. So when you coach, do you feel like you wish you could have been able to do some side lessons and coach a little bit while you were playing? Do you think that would have helped your game?
You know, I think it would have. Yeah, I think I should have done some more coaching while I was doing it. I was very, I always was like, if I'm not competing in golf, I don't want to be in the golf world. Like, that was kind of my mindset. Because I wasn't a golf fanatic, I was a competitor, and I loved competing in golf. And so I kind of separated that in my mind. But I do think you're right. I think coaching while I was playing would have actually, it would have given me even some more perspective that I didn't necessarily have, that could have been beneficial for sure.
What was your part of your game? And I really like diving into the golf stuff, because Tom Buski, who's one of the owners that MASH with me, is an incredible golfer, but he can't putt to save his life. I mean, this guy will get on the green in 2, and then he's just putting in 3. What were you at? What were you excel at, and what do you wish you could have been better at throughout your career?
It's good. Yeah, I was pretty good all around. So I was all around pretty solid. Meaning I didn't necessarily have any insane standouts. The one thing that was a differentiator for me was my length. I hit the ball long ways. I was usually in the top percentile. But the thing that I was weak in was my driving accuracy. So that was the kind of my Achilles heel, was keeping it in play or helping myself off the tee versus hurting myself. And so I think that's the thing that and it's tough, because looking back, I mean, when I did get some momentum on my side is when the injuries started coming up and recurring. so the competitor in me is like, man, you didn't give yourself a chance to succeed, and some of that's true, but some of that's just life. I mean, it just didn't work out, and it wasn't what was meant to be. But yeah, I think growing up, I hit a draw my whole life, and I had kind of a natural swing that wasn't very coached. Like, I didn't have a lot of swing coaches. And
That's
then when I
awesome.
turned professional, I did work with a swing coach. Great guy, John Ray Leary here in LA. Really helpful coach. But I think I tended inwardly to start going so microscopic and so analytical of my swing that I got away from what made me good in the first place, which was just feeling it and having that natural feel and rhythm that produced the shots I needed. And so I think I would have stayed away from the analytical thinking and mindset and really leaned into and embraced more of the natural feel oriented approach that was really my bread and butter anyways, that I kind of strayed from.
So were you ever able to implement breath work into what you were doing when you were golfing?
Yeah, it was fascinating actually. So I actually got to go to a workshop with Brian teaching the Wim Hof method, but that happened right basically when the injury happened. That was like the week or month before the initial injury happened. So it wasn't on the forefront of my mind, but I did implement it a couple times in different tournaments in dealing with heart rate and focus on shots. So I do remember distinctly having several tournaments where that was kind of a forefront focus of mine, was to incorporate that more, but I didn't get to do it as much as I wanted to, partly because my mind was preoccupied with injury and resolving all things on the body. So it was honestly such a great tool that I wish I would have had more time competing with that practice, because it can really play a major benefit.
So when you, from here to there, right? How does that title come about?
Well, it's funny. I don't necessarily even remember all of the title's background. The initial idea for the book came January of 2017. It was, or January of 2017.
Sure.
So the injury had been going on since.
Shoot, so you're coming up on 2 years here.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the injury had been going on for about 6 months up to that point, and it had. I was flying to Bangkok, Thailand for the Asian Tour qualifier, and I had re-aggravated my muscle strain kind of the week before. And so in my heart, I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete, but I had to give it a shot anyways. And so when I was on the plane, the initial idea for the book came up, and it was in thinking about how can I repay my investors and my sponsors for the gift that they've given me, for allowing me to pursue this career path. And at that point, it didn't seem very, very likely that I'd be able to repay them financially. And so that was like, man, it'd be cool to write a book about what this journey has taught me. And so I jotted down like 20 different titles and just kind of brainstormed on it for a couple hours. None of those titles were from here to there. We're all golf specific. But then fast forward 5 months, in April, the injury had repeated again. I was in Kansas, and I didn't want to just sit on my butt and rehab and practice putting and chipping for a couple months in Kansas. So I felt like God was giving me the space to start, and so I decided to dive in. And so it took a month really just reading all I'd written before, trying to figure out, what is this book about? What does this even look like? How do I structure it? And after a month of kind of racking my brain, I was like, I just need to dive in. So I puked out the rough draft in a couple months, and then got back into competing, kind of pushed pause on it. And then that fall, when I pushed pause on competing after Q school, I revisited and wanted to finish it, and I finished it by the end of the initial draft. I finished it by the end of December. And so then I had this book, and what ended up starting to be about a book. It started out as a book about how golf can teach you about life, and then it kind of turned into a book about how to pursue mastery or excellence in any field, illustrated by my journey as a golfer. And I think that throughout that process, it was a transition. It was a big transition period for me, moving from professional golf into these different entrepreneurial endeavors. And it was also kind of the book itself was a period of transition as well. And so I think the transitions made it like, okay, I'm moving from here to there. And so much of life is about moving from one point A to point B, and how do you do that? And so really, I think that's where the heart of the book comes from is okay, how do we move from point A to point B? How do we move from here to there, from where we currently are to where we want to be,
right,
where we're going, in that process of development.
How scary is reading your own book the first time?
I was just going to ask that, dude. That's crazy that you said that.
Like, I would just be so, like, I would put, like, obviously you read it back while you're writing it, but, like, when you're like, I'm done with my book now.
It's happening
and you
now.
sit down and you read it.
And you know people are going to read it,
yeah.
too.
One, how scary was that? And two, do you remember who purchased your first book?
Wow. There's so much that's scary about writing your own book. I think I remember after I did the initial draft, I finished it in just like by the end of 2017, which was a goal, and then I kind of sat on it for a couple months as I got all these other things going. And then when I revisited it, I read it, I was like, this sucks. This is awful. And I was so excited coming into it. I read it again. I was like, wow, I cannot believe that I thought this was good. And then it was kind of this depressing feeling of how do I make this good?
Yeah.
I have no idea, So then comes a really hard work of like, okay, how do you turn this from this puked up content into something that's actually readable and enjoyable to read? And so that was a couple month fight process. And then editing, revising over and over again, getting other people to help with. And then I did pay for a proofreader, which was really helpful.
Oh yeah.
But even then, there's going to be typos. There's going to be things that are off, and I think it's just accepting that. So I think it is scary, but it's funny. I think on the other side too, there's things that I read in there. I'm like, wow, I wrote that. Oh, that's pretty good. Like,
yeah,
wow, I can't believe I wrote that. So there's things on that on both sides, and I think that's just. It's so synonymous with life, right? There's things that we're really proud of, or that we're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And then there's also things like, man, that's a bummer. I wish it was better. So.
Well, I think it's interesting how it, and maybe you guys will understand this, but we're all in the sense of we're all entrepreneurs, right? And so and so with that comes creating content. And what I think is interesting, Nolan, he'll get a crack out of this, but he'll always plug at me and say, hey, I need you to speak in front of this camera for 10 minutes or say this or say what's on your mind here. And what I think is crazy is some days you think that what you're saying or what you write, you're like all locked in, right? You're feeling all artistic. And then like a month later, you're like, what was I thinking that day? It's kind of a balance. But then like the next month, you'll listen to it again and go, like, yeah, hell yeah, man, I was freaking nailing it that day. But I just think it's weird. That's what I think is cool about a book / scary about a book. Like, how do you think, and this is none of us know the answer to this, but like you could read your book in 10 years and you'll be completely different of a human in 10 years from now. Experiences. And that's what I think goes back to what we've already talked about on the podcast of good or bad, right or wrong. Like, it's like whatever we know now, all of us who are on this call in 10 years will know more, or will think of what we thought 10 years ago might be might be dumb now.
I can't believe I did that.
So so I guess, I don't know if you look at it that way or not.
Totally.
But kind of how did you fight through that journey of, I'm sure you had some internal battles of, well, today I don't really feel as clever, or maybe I don't feel like I believe in this. You're a human, you have human thoughts. So things like that, how did you kind of battle through that journey?
Yeah, well, I want to start by speaking to what you said before that, which was the perspective and changing. And the quote actually that I put at the front of the book to kind of set the tone was a quote from Muhammad Ali, who said, "The views his life at the age of 20 the same he does at the age of 50, wasted 30 years of his life.
Love it.
And that's the point, is like, look, and that's why the subtitle is A Quarter Life Perspective on the Path to Mastery.
Yeah.
It's like, look, guys, take this for what it is. It's my 25-year-old's perspective on it. And I think my grandpa really helped with that, saying, like, we were talking about it, and he's like, look, Thane, you're writing about the marathon, and you're only on mile 9. Like, that's not very wise. And I'm like, man, that's a good slap in the face, because I need it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think all of those things, I want to make sure that that's clear, and that it will change, and that's a good thing. But I think you're right. Like, writing a book is kind of like many things in life. It's like starting a business. It's like life itself, right? Showing up every day is the work, and it's not easy. You know, it's not that every day is going to be good or every day is going to be bad. You're going to have a little bit of both and everything in between. But it's really just about showing up and doing it, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how inspired you are.
Right.
And to do that, like, you have to have the vision in front of you. You have to be clear about why you're doing it, right? You have to constantly be providing yourself with the incentives and the motivations to do it, and you have to believe in it. If you don't believe in it, it's worthless to do. So, I mean, Woody Allen said 80% of success is just showing up, and so true. Like, it's just doing the work. And the cool thing about a book is it's such a long typically. I mean, some people have done it shorter, longer, all that stuff, but typically it's a very long process to do well. And so it's a great training grounds for that delayed gratification that takes discipline and
100%.
instilling that inner self. So,
well, and that's probably even the most important lesson, wouldn't you, for yourself personally?
Totally. Yeah. To be able to have an idea and then to see it through, even if it takes 2 years, it's very encouraging and fulfilling to see that now coming to fruition.
That is cool, man. Congratulations. I mean, whatever happens, and obviously I've peeled into some parts of the book. I haven't been able to sit down and read the entire thing. I just kind of skimmed through it to kind of pick up some titles and things that would activate what we were doing the other day when we were reading through it at the office, and that breathing one really stuck out to us, and talking about conscious breathing and whatnot. But I think you're right. Well, obviously I think you're right. I'm agreeing with you, but it's like, when I'm listening to you speak, and I love the fact of, you're 25 years old. I'm on mile 9 of the marathon. This is what I know. This is my perspective. And then having the vulnerability to understand that, you're going to know more. And that's our duty, right? Like, our duty is to keep learning. And then what you have, share it. And that's where we kind of all have the connectiveness. That's where it's exciting to talk to people that are older than you or younger than you. And I think as a coach, what is also really hard / interesting, but taking what you're saying, is sometimes, having a 16-year-old, I catch myself doing this a lot, having a 16 or 17-year-old kind of call you out, and you know they're right, but you don't want them to know that they're right because you're supposed to be
How
the
can
coach.
I tell him he's wrong even though he's right? I'm going to get him to be wrong right now.
Yeah. But why I say that too is I think so. Steve, to bring it into context of McGuigan, Steve started this company, MASH Baseball, MASH Performance, in 2012. And it's in here in Minneapolis. I was helping out since the beginning. I became full-time with Steve in 2015 when I was done playing baseball. And the first thing that I noticed when we started in 2012 was we were 22, 23 years old.
Children.
And you have parents, or you have, other people, and it would be, what would used to frustrate me so much was you would be in these leadership roles, right? And you're a coach, and you can't do anything about the fact that you're 23 at the time. Like, we're 23, and you want to be a good coach. And I would say this for anybody who listens to this. Thanks, Vok. Vok just poured me a cup of Joe. But I would say this for anybody, and even as we are still young, and you write a book, and why I admire you doing that. But think about how many people who are 25 or 26 that want to write a book, but the amount of people who go, you're 25, 26, what do you know? And then that stops them from ever writing a book. And the ideas that they could have given to the world, or the things that they could have shared. Whereas I think of Steve, when he would start the company, when he was 22, 23 years old, I remember sitting back, and I didn't have to worry about it because I still played baseball. So to me, it was like I played professional baseball at the time. Throw this ball, kid, and have fun with it, and I don't need to deal with all the hard stuff that Steve's dealing with of being a young entrepreneur and a baseball coach. But people used to always say, "You're 23. What do you know?" It's not that he knew anything. But think about how many people that would stop, right, Steve? Well, then this person, I am 23, man. I guess I shouldn't be doing this. I won't continue to show up, right? And so for young people and us in the young generation, I think that is, I listened to Cody Burkhardt. I don't know if you saw his presentation, and he's relevant now because we've talked about it. But this morning, weirdly enough, I was on a way to a meeting this morning, and I was listening to his presentation in Colorado recently. I can't remember who he was talking to. It was an engineer, whatever. But he said that if you get past the fear of the beginning, then you have a shot. But that's the biggest part. Can you get past the fear of the beginning? And then he said, if you do get past the fear of the beginning, or if you're somebody about to hire somebody or join the team, if they can't get past the beginning, then don't hire them, because there's so many problems to solve that if they can't take the first step, it's worthless. So I'm sitting here with some good buddies talking to you who just published this book. And I think it's cool to acknowledge everybody that's on the podcast right now for doing things like that. So I guess I'm complimenting all of you, including you, Vok, even who just made the coffee.
Thanks, Mark. I got one of those from you in a while.
But it's cool to hear people. I think that's inspiring, right? I think that is something for people to take. Just take the step, deal with the fear, and just keep showing up.
Yeah. Seth Godin says if it scares you, it might be a good thing to try. And so many of those people say, like, never take a job that you're qualified for. And all those things is like speaking to reaching beyond where you're currently at. That's what growth is, right? I mean, you don't get stronger by lifting the weight that you know you can lift. You get stronger by lifting the weight that you think you might be able to lift and trying to make it happen. And I think you made a really important point about age. Age is we put age in such a box, a determining box that it doesn't deserve. When you think about age is just a metric for amount of life lived, but it does not factor in experience and knowledge and all of the things that life entails. And so it's a very simplistic way of seeing the world that usually is only a surface metric.
Sure.
Because your life, our lives, all of our lives in the 20s and early 30s are so drastically different than each other's, just because we've lived 20 to 30 some years that aren't the same,
right.
And so for us to assume that every 20-year-old or every 30-year-old is of this level or this capacity is just naive, and I think it's easy for us to just group people into those places, and again, there is some value to that, right? It's not to say that that's all like wrong. There is truth to that. The longer you live, the more experience you will have in life. Right. Now, does that experience equate to like equipping and to skills? Maybe, it's not a guaranteed. So yeah, I think that for those who are listening who are younger, it's understanding that age is a very surface level metric that does not determine whether or not you should do something,
right,
or should not do something. And then the other thing you said that I think is also super important is that we all must strive to have and always carry humility, right? Yeah. We have to have humility, knowing that we don't know it all, and we won't know it all. But that doesn't mean we can't own what we do know,
right?
And own that with humility, knowing that we're going to learn and grow every single year that we do live. And so, yeah, I think humility is really the key, especially the younger we are. I think I think as younger men, right? Like I even looked at myself a year ago or 2 years ago, right? And it's like, man. A lot of times we have this chip on our shoulders, like, oh, I need to act and speak and think like I have it all figured out. That way I can have confidence. And that's more of ignorance than it is confidence. We can still be confident with a sense of humility, and that's really what people see. Like, if you aren't humble, that comes across in how you communicate, not necessarily what you communicate, and everyone can recognize that.
Wait till the 3-hole hits you, Thane. You start thinking you're supposed to be a whole different person. I'll tell you that.
He said young man, and I looked at Steve. I said, hey.
Steve,
I don't know if that's you anymore.
I'm so young.
Hey, 30's young.
30's young. 30's young.
I'm okay.
No,
I'm okay. It's all right.
I think it's right on, man. And something that I always challenge myself with, and I think we need to ask ourselves all the time is, if we're all seeking wisdom and we know that experience, and you talked about ages, right? So if, longer life is more experience, yes and no, you can go back and forth on that. But if we know that experience creates wisdom, then why aren't we experimenting? And I think you can do that at any age. You can experiment at any time. You can challenge your growth and your lessons and your knowledge whenever. You just, I think what's cool about in our ages now is you're in a young age where you got to battle with maybe a higher sense of fear if you're willing to experiment. But that's what makes it fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, said, man. Well said. Well, I think in terms of kind of hearing you, I want you to stay on that thought pattern and stay on that role, and kind of maybe that'll segue into the Diamond Series here, and you can kind of take us through things that make Thane and sustain your growth and sustain your want. Yeah, sustain Thane. But look at it in the sense of we created the Diamond Series to basically, it's just a platform to find awareness, to enhance your awareness. We're always trying to figure out, how do you level up your awareness? I think that's hard to quantify, but to ask yourself questions and kind of go through the Diamond Series is just one of our ways to do it, right? So you look at that, like I said, you kind of funnel purpose, standards, systems, division, and you just kind of ask. We just like hearing what people do for those things, and what are you going to say about it?
Before we jump into the Diamond Series, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been waiting to ask it the whole time. I'm the long ball competition, I'm a huge fan of that. And I've just wanted to know, what's your longest drive? I'm just so into that stuff.
Well, that's a tough question because there's so many factors, right? But there was a par 5 that was downhill, downwind, and it was like, oh boy, 460.
Oh my.
But that's just like, again, it's not really, it's on average. My drives on average were about 315. So,
okay. But if someone asks you, 460.
460. It's like our fastballs.
I hit 100 once on a changeup. So they asked me how hard I throw. So I hit 100 once. But
it wasn't off the bat,
yeah.
But it was 100.
I love it.
No, so what, where you're at now, man, with your life and quarter life, what's your purpose? What's the kind of thing that you're willing to struggle for as you move forward here? How do you do certain things to serve others? What's the thing that keeps you, what's your why?
Yeah, so good. It's so important. That's the thing that we all are lazy about. If you don't have that figured out, there's no foundation, right? So everyone listening, man, this is massive. It's super huge. And I have to remind myself of that daily too. It's not like this is something that goes away. I'm daily preaching this to myself. But for me, I'm a Christian, so my why is to honor and glorify God and love Him, and then love others well before myself. Those are kind of my two foundational whys. And it's my purpose for all that I do, and it gives me passion and purpose in everything I do, which is such an amazing gift. And really what that looks like as it plays out now with my current life is, the way I describe it is helping others work and live better. That's a lot of what I do with my collaboration work, is a combination of coaching, consulting, creating, kind of taking that professional athlete's mindset to everyday people and everyday life, and just really helping come alongside others to do that same thing. Help them get clear about their purpose, their reason, their vision for what they're doing, and then look at current life, and then how we can develop a strategic game plan to get to where they want to go. So I think there's nothing more fulfilling than helping empower others, because really, if we can all take ownership of our lives, the two things that really underscore the book even are taking ownership of our lives and never settling for less than we're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can help empower others to do that while I strive to do that myself, then the world will become a better place.
It's like a high sense of accountability too that you give yourself, which is really important. That's awesome. Well said, man. Strong purpose there. And as you kind of see it flow, right, that obviously has created some standards. And we've talked through this podcast a few times about you get a lot on your plate, but you all obviously that excites you, right? So to be able to do these things professionally, business, book writing, connecting, what are some things that you keep yourself accountable to personally? What are the standards that you hold yourself to?
Yeah, there's the one that I am constantly having to fight for is I'm so goals oriented. I'm so focused on the vision that I can sometimes put blinders up and not see people for people.
Sure.
So the one that I really want to continue focusing and working on is just seeing what I believe as human beings. I believe that two things about every human being: we're created in the image of God, is what he says in the Bible, and that means that everyone has inherent worth that you can't take away. So everyone is worthy of value. And then along with that, I believe that we're all sinners, which means none of us is worthy of praise any more than anyone else. So what those two core tenets means is I should view every single person as no greater than or better than myself, as a human being, that has value, no matter what label we like to put on people. And that means really when there's needs of other people right in front of me and I'm not seeing it because I'm so focused on what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm missing really the purpose of life.
Right.
And so that's a big standard or value I really strive to continually instill in my mind and in my daily life, is to not be so committed to my schedule, my task list, to-do list, that I miss seeing the needs that people right in front of me.
You and I can play golf together now, Thane.
Yeah, you got Stevie.
I love that.
You got
That's
the
a
old
fantastic answer. Just selfishly, I love that answer, so I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Go on.
So that's one. And then I think discipline is one of my just huge foundational parts of my being and what I do. I truly think that that it is a balance, right? The emotions and passions that we have are a gift, and they're a good thing. But if we're driven by them solely, then there's a quote, I think a Jersey Gregorick in Tim Ferriss's podcast. He said, this is a great quote. He quoted Plato. He said, "If the chariot is the body, the horses are our emotions, and the rider is our mind. If the horses are dragging the rider against his will, danger is coming." So Jersey said that paying attention to our emotions, working with them, is important. Horses are great. They are just wild and they want their own way. So don't punish the horses, use the horses, but turn them where you want to go. And so that's where discipline comes in, is controlling and turning our emotions to use them to our advantage. And discipline is a big part of what I do. And it's like a muscle that you exercise. And I've been exercising that muscle for quite a few years now, to where I'm very committed to not dropping the ball on exercising that muscle because of how far I've been able to grow with that muscle. So that's a big standard or value.
So you're a fitness guy. You own a coffee shop. You are an extremely good golfer. I know for me, I personally am extremely disciplined in my work, getting my work done, but at the same time, my balance, because of that discipline or that thought in my head, in my personal life, in my love life, in my workout life, is probably not where it should be. So I'm asking you for a little advice here based on the fact that you're going all over the place doing all these things. How do I balance out that discipline a little bit more within my life personally? You got any tips for the old bull here?
And me too, please. Please.
I love it. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that for people who are strong in discipline, they are weak in self-care or giving grace or love to ourselves. I think create the world in one day. Like, what the heck? Why would you do 6 days and then rest the seventh? And I think what he's doing is he's setting an example for us to follow. And living in the achievement-based culture that we do, especially in LA, it's the epicenter of that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The culture is workaholism and achievement at the cost of all else. And so you get this norm of sleeping 5 hours a night and working all day and working all weekend and just hustling. And that's really dangerous, and it can be really detrimental to not only ourselves but to others and ultimately to our bodies. So I think taking a Sabbath day, a day of rest, like where you don't do any work, is super important. And then just being like, as an athlete, the thing that really, one of the gifts of being a professional athlete is learning that, sleep is a non-negotiable, and that's what produces performance. And so it's kind of just preaching truth to yourself of like, look, I need 7 to 9 hours of sleep on average per night, and that's going to elevate everything else I do. Because at the end of the day, we always think that activity is achievement, and that's not true, right? Just because you're active and you're doing things and you're doing activities, you're knocking off lists, that doesn't mean you're achieving what you really want to,
right.
But it feels like it. And so, it's just, it's not that you don't know all these things, right? We all know these things. It's just we have to preach the truth to ourselves, and then believe it, because our actions reveal our beliefs. So,
it's like a trick your mind plays on you, right? If you're moving
yes.
or active, or if you at least do something 7 days a week, your mind, it's like a trick. And then you find
yes.
you get so deep in the rut, you're just buried in almost disappointment.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, so for me, like I would recommend finding what works for you, obviously, right? But for me, what really helps is doing some self-care things, like spending time reading. I love reading, but I rarely make time for it. So I'll just like schedule out an evening and be like, no, I'm going to read tonight, because this work will always be there. And then I love floating. I don't know if you guys have done any sensory deprivation tanks before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a membership at one of those that I'll do at least once a month, which is just an awesome space and time to kind of recover.
Now, does that not trip you out or anything? Dave, who plays hockey overseas, he does a lot of. Comes on the podcast a lot with us too. He's in MindStrong. He loves going floating.
Yeah.
Floating, that's the term? Floating?
Yeah, definitely.
We're going floating.
But I've also heard, now I've never done it, none of us have ever done it before, but I've also heard some people who have tripped out doing that.
Yeah. It is almost like a natural, it can be almost like a natural psychedelic experience.
Sure.
And it is really insane. Like, you're in a tank with, literally you can put your hand in front of your face and not see it. It's so dark and it's so quiet. And the water's temperature controlled, so you do feel the water, but you can get to a place where you're almost like not even feeling the water as much. So it's a really crazy experience, but man, I love it so much because it doesn't only benefit your body, first of all, through the Epsom salts, a great detoxifier. Through without gravity, it's great for your circulation, your blood flow, and then also for muscle recovery. And then ultimately, it's just really good for your mind. It's a forced 60-minute meditation, which I don't know about you guys, but I can't force myself to sit for 60 minutes and do nothing and meditate. And so this is a place where I can do that, and it's a really cool place. But the first couple times, it's a lot. If you've never meditated before, it's going to be overwhelming, and usually you can't make it the full hour. My sister made it for like 40 minutes the first time.
Really?
Which is great. It's just tough because
I see myself as a 12-minute guy.
Yeah, Steve's probably in and out. Dip the toe in. And
there we go. Yep.
This might be a dumb question.
Probably.
But yeah, probably. But how big is the tank? Like,
it's really big actually. So the water's only 8 to 10 inches deep.
Okay, because I'm not. Yeah,
but
okay.
I can stretch out. I'm 6'2", and I can stretch out my arms all the way over my head and my feet, like stretched out.
I'd be
and
a
barely touch. So it's pretty good.
That is cool. That is really cool. So I gotta assume you mentioned goals is very important to you, and obviously some systems and habits. When we go to our our second base there, we call it systems of excellence. I gotta assume deprivation tank is a system of yours to kind of center yourself out.
Sleep.
Sleep, breathing, goal setting.
Reading.
Yeah. So what would be your? And I know this is always in the art of mastery, right? We're all aware that things will change, but in the moment, what are some things that you have found or are doing currently that are mastering your life for you? What are some things that are really helping you?
Yeah, rhythms, so daily and weekly rhythms. I like to spend some time on Sundays to really map out big picture priorities, what needs to be accomplished for the week ahead. Like you've heard, I'm spread too thin. I've got quite a few spinning plates, and I wear 3 or 4 different hats. And with that, it's stretching, so it's making me stronger and better as a human, but it's also painful and hard, and balls can be dropped. And so yeah, that the weekly rhythm of at least once a week, kind of sitting down with a notebook and just getting clear about each bucket and the things that are really important in it. That's an important one for me. And then daily, like having a schedule that I try to just literally put everything and every night before bed, I will fill out the schedule for the next day on my phone, really make clear like where things go and what needs to be accomplished and what time, and map it all out. That's really helpful. And then really like just Evernote is probably the number one tool that I use. I organize everything in Evernote, which is a note-taking kind of online app that you can use, and it's just really helpful.
Evernote,
yeah, with an E,
Drop
like Ever and Note, yeah.
Steve's downloading it currently.
It's great. Like I create all these different folders, and then in each folder I have different notes, and it just keeps everything housed in its right place. And I can use it on my phone, my computer, or online, and it's a great way to try to keep track of all of these moving parts. And then I think the other thing is just really understanding that this is a season, and this isn't good long term.
Yeah.
So my goal is to keep moving these balls forward until I can provide enough to start leveraging each kind of bucket with other people. I'm excited to partner with people in the next year to help alleviate my role so that I can really niche down and focus in on where my unique values and strengths are. But that's part of the process of growing and learning and building, is that you at some points have to wear all the hats, and then you start wearing less hats as you grow and build and have more momentum. And so I am excited about that when that time does come. But for now, it's a very spread place in life.
That's cool, man. I think, we all have Evernote now. So
yeah, we all got Evernote.
Let's see how that.
Plug for Evernote.
So you're a very organized man. Is really what I'm gathering here.
Yes.
I think we're all gathering that.
For sure.
And we are not.
Yeah, we are fly by the seat of our pants. But I think that's good. We're all balancing each other out here.
Oh, yeah.
True. We need each other.
That's true.
We
We need each other. That's awesome. So when you, beautiful. I'm excited to hear this next piece. Steve, do you want to take it? This is your favorite base.
Well, I hit a lot of triples.
Yeah.
So, and I like to talk about vision. So really what it comes down to is, where do we go next? Where are we going from here? This is the exciting thing. Everyone's seen the book. They've heard the past. Now they want to know what you got planned for the future. Where are we going next?
I love it, man. Well, as I've been working on releasing this book and getting it out to the world, I've also started working on developing kind of a new avenue of speaking. So that's probably the thing I'm most excited about now, is to develop as a speaker and really expand my presence in that world. So I've got a conference I'm speaking at this next month, and I'm trying to line up as many events as possible to get experience, because it's not the same thing as a podcast or talking with friends or even smaller group settings. So it's a whole different animal. So I've got a lot of work to do and experience to gain on that, but I'm really excited about it because I'm super passionate about just communicating and sharing ideas that can really, again, empower, inform, and expand perspectives. So that's a big focus for the next year for me, is really to build that out. And then I love writing. I always want to keep writing, so future books is going to be a big part of it. Nice. And I plan to write my whole life on the side. So I think with the speaking, that's a focus, and then the collaborating, which is the coaching work I'm doing with individuals, that's also something that I continue want to build out, because again, it's very fulfilling to come alongside individuals and really share the systems, routines, habits, things that I'm doing, but also help them unlock these kind of concepts of what they're really striving to do in their lives, what their purpose is, what their vision is. And a lot of times we can't do this on our own. We need someone to help us hold our hand in that, partly because what we don't get on our own is two things. We can't get objectivity, right? We can't see ourselves really objectively, and we don't have accountability usually with ourselves. So those are two things that are really important with having a coach or someone else in your life to help out with those ways.
Accountability, buddy.
Yeah, no, Thane, I've really enjoyed listening to you talk to us today, and I think it's very insightful, and you're right. It is different speaking in a podcast, but you're very fluid in the way that you answer things. You can tell that coming off, subconsciously, you do these things routinely, which is really cool. I'm interested, and I want to peel in there a little bit and get something out of you here, but what would you, with everything that you're doing, and you take this as future books, speaking, you've had a cool path, and obviously mastery is really important to you, and you're willing to take on very difficult tasks, and we've talked about age and certain things. What would you say in the moment that you would like to see or like to change in humans?
Wow. That's a big question.
Jesus.
I was thinking about
Jesus,
it.
Mart.
I was thinking, am I
We're
going to ask him
having
this?
fun.
I want to.
And then he goes full Martin mode on us.
I want to ask. I want to know. I think
Yeah,
it'd be
what
a
I would
very
change.
interesting answer here.
Man, there's many aspects of it, but it really comes down to taking ownership. I think is the simplest way to say it. Like, I think people really struggle to take ownership on many fronts. One, they struggle to take ownership of maybe their emotions or desires, or being led by the moment versus the vision. So I think that's one aspect of it. And then the other is just really like taking ownership of their lives, taking control of their lives and their decisions. So much of today's world, we get wrapped up in all the other things that are happening, or what other people are doing, or all these other things that may affect our lives. But at the end of the day, you're the one who has the most control over your own life and the decisions and the actions you take. And it really does come down to you. And my brother-in-law, John, I interviewed him on my podcast. He's also a professional or business executive coach. And he has a great way of saying, like, there's one guarantee in life. Something is going to happen, right? Something's going to happen.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a guarantee. Now, it's up to you to choose whether that's good or bad, or whether that is what you want, or if you want to do something different. Something's going to happen. Now, it's up to you to have that choice. And so I think, man, if we could get more people taking ownership of their lives, taking responsibility for their decisions, and taking the impetus onto themselves to be the change that they wish to see in the world, while understanding that it takes a lot of patience and a lot of persistence to really ever move the needle in anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can get people tracking with that, man, there's some cool things that we could see happen societally and globally. So I think that'd be what I'd say.
I
I love it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say male pattern baldness. That was going to be my answer, I would get rid of that.
That's what old Stevie Boy would have gone with. Huh? Well, that was a little bit deeper intellectually.
I love it.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. Locked in.
I think we just go to California, we play some golf, we drink some coffee, and we feel great about ourselves with Thane.
Yes.
I think it's simple as that.
Now we're
Count me in.
talking.
No, man. Hey, awesome time talking to you, man. And we got to do I know this is the hard part here, but how do people? We'll give the plug. You got to plug it a little bit, and we talked about the Eagle List, but lay it on us. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find the book? And obviously we'll showcase that and we'll post about the book as well in this podcast. But how do people get to you? Speaking engagements, certain things. How can people connect with Thane?
Yeah, thank you. No, Thane Marcus is the kind of personal brand that I've built. So thanemarcus.com is where I house all of my speaking information, all of the blog posts I write, all the information on the book, and the collaboration work I do. Definitely check that out. I've got plenty of places you can connect with me on there through email and whatnot. And then obviously on the socials at Thane Marcus is Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. So would love to, connect with people. And if they want to talk about potentially working together, would love to start some conversations on that. And ultimately would love it if you guys listening would pick up a copy of the book. This has been a couple-year project almost.
Absolutely.
Coming up this winter. And I'm just really excited to share it. I mean, it was one of those really humbling and fulfilling moments when I finally held it in my hands. It's kind of surreal. So I just can't wait to share it with people and have them check it out for themselves.
Awesome stuff, man. I mean, I appreciate you connecting all of us and us getting in. I'm sure we'll be in touch and continue to help each other out. And MindStrong will do what we can to push what you're doing, because what you're doing is really cool. Obviously, we believe in it. And hopefully we can all kind of level each other up and keep, mastering the art of mastery, if we will. It was a pleasure having you on today, my man. I know Tony caught his big shot as a side commenter. Thank you, Tone.
Hey, no problem.
For working with the boys today.
Thane, I hope one day me and you can tee it up for 18.
And go long drive for long drive.
Yes, you guys better hit me up next time you're in LA.
Absolutely.
Love to connect and definitely swing it a bit. I know you guys have probably got the baseball slice going on, but we can work on that.
Oh yeah, we have the baseball slice.
Oh yeah.
We got some baseball slice here for the boys. I golf barefoot, by the way, too. So hopefully I can get allowed on the courses.
Jeez.
They let me around the courses barefoot up here in the Midwest. But
So epic.
Stevie boy.
Hey, simple as this, it was great. Appreciate everything you did. I'm going to have to start reading now because I'm going to read your book, which is great. And we appreciate your time. We just appreciate your time. People's time is awesome, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeding off that too, man. That is we like thanking people for giving us this time. Like Steve just said, that's one of the greatest forms of leadership. So from MindStrong's end, thanks for being with us, Thane.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much for having me again. It's a pleasure and super fun combo.
Absolutely, brother. We will talk soon.
Later, guys.
All right, take care.